Hey, and welcome to Facts Schmacks, the podcast good enough to get you a C.
Minus.
I'm Matt, and I've got a story to tell.
And I'm Kev. I have a story to interrupt.
All right. As always, we start our episodes around here with our good friend Kevin giving us two things that are true, which would be facts, and one thing that is definitely not true that you would call a schmacked. Kevin, what
Matt,
have you got for me this week?
I've got some juicy goodies here.
Oh, let's hear it.
All right. So, coming up, we have Remembrance Day.
Yep.
Also known as, the armistice of World War I, November 11th.
Yep.
So how about some famous people with military history you didn't expect?
Okay. I love it.
Okay. So,
Can't wait.
here's our first one. Although famous for playing the prim and proper Niles Crane on Frasier, a character you should be quite familiar with.
You bet. You're not going to tell me that David Hyde Pierce.
David Hyde Pierce did a 3-year stint with the U.S. Navy
Huh.
in his young
Okay.
years. Okay.
All right. I
There's-
can buy it, but... Huh.
There's one. So,
All right.
Wilford Brimley, a man near and dear to my own heart. He's
Yeah.
about as close to my heart as arterial plaque. He was the Quaker Oats guy, for those of you who don't know. He also had the diabetes commercials.
Yeah,
Which
and
gave me the
he
alternate pronunciation of diabetes.
he was in the movie Hard Target, which I think maybe now I'm just going to try to fit in this show as many times as I can.
Yeah, so he was a U.S. Marine during the Korean War and served 3 years in the Aleutian Islands.
I believe that 1,000%. I believe he has killed a man and he knows what it looks like to watch the soul of somebody leave the body.
He has dispatched somebody from this ethereal realm.
Yeah, I have no
Okay,
trouble believing that.
And my third fact is, do you know who Dr. Ruth is?
Yeah.
So she's like America's sex therapist. We
Yeah.
had in Canada, we had Sue Johansson.
Yeah.
Remember Sue Johansson from Showcase? I learned
I
a lot
sure
from
do.
Sue Johansson.
Sure.
I remember that, yeah. I never looked
Yeah.
at a banana the same way.
No, Sujo hand job.
So anyhow, Dr. Ruth, who is now 93, by the way, America's sex therapist, is a trained sniper.
All right. Yeah. So they all seem really quite plausible here.
Except...
So David Hyde Pierce here. That's the one that I actually don't think is very likely.
Really? You
said
think
he was-
Dr. Ruth is a sniper?
That lady is badass. Now, hang on. Let me think this through, though. Because what year would she have had to have been trained as a sniper? Women wouldn't have been in the service.
Well, she's 93 in that. So let's think,
Yeah,
she's 93 now. I don't know what the C average math on that is, but I mean, we're talking way back.
Yeah,
We
so
gotta be talking
unless
like 60s. 60s, 70s at least.
unless she's not this is tough because I have a hard time believing the David Hyde Pierce thing. The Dr. Ruth thing, for some reason, it does not strike me at all unreasonable that she'd be a stone cold killer.
No kidding.
But she couldn't be American, right? She would have had what's her Dr. Ruth? Is she actually Swedish or Russian or
see, now here's the problem with this podcast is I didn't really dig too
we don't
deep
know.
into this.
Yeah.
It's a wine and third. I could look it up, but it's kind of it starts with a W. It's WEIN something or WIEN something.
Okay, controversial, but I'm saying David Hyde Pierce. I'm saying that's the one I do not believe.
You low down son of a bitch.
Did I win?
I really thought I would get you on this one.
That was hard.
Sure that I would get you on this one. So here's the thing. Dr. Ruth was Israeli and was trained as a scout and had sniper training. Yeah.
Of course. How
Because they have
didn't
the
I?
mandatory conscription over there, right? Now,
Right.
here's a little bonus fact
Men and women.
about Wilford Brimley. I didn't want to throw this in there because it would be too obvious that it was like so detailed of a fact. Did you know that Wilford Brimley was at one point a bodyguard to a famous industrialist, inventor, Howard Hughes?
No kidding.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I like maybe he guarded his pea jars or something. I don't know.
Make sure nobody tried to clip his toenails.
Yeah. Well, that's what I got. I'm really disappointed because I really was like, he's not going to get this. Like, I'd have bought David Hyde Pierce doing a stint in the Navy. I mean, it's just the Navy. It's lots of people do it.
Yeah.
Like, if I was like,
that was
he was a
one
Navy
where
SEAL.
the Dr. Ruth. Listen, as I'm grading these, that was the best so far. Like, that was a 50-50 for me. Okay. I knew for an absolute fact, like I said, that Wilford Brimley has killed a man.
Oh, 100%. You can just see it in his eyes.
You can see it in his eyes. Mm-hmm. Allegedly.
Allegedly. Good point. I am going to get you on this.
So that was a 50-50.
The content is going to ramp up from here. And they won't always be maybe funny. I mean, not to say that any of them were funny, but we're going to go for some serious stumpers now.
Have you ever seen the Wilford Brimley line? It's just it's a Twitter account that congratulates actors as they pass the age that Wilford Brimley was on the day that Cocoon came out.
No.
And it's the actors that have passed that line. It's like Paul Rudd, of course, has. It's all just young people who don't look like they belong in a retirement home.
Oh,
like
is Paul Rudd really old?
Yeah, he's older than Wilford Brimley was.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, you have a show for us.
I do.
So we can carry on with that. I'm going to get you. That's my goal.
Okay. So we're going to be talking. This is kind of a time period that we've already kind of covered before, but a lot of interesting things were going on. Turn of the 20th century in Europe. There's some interesting things going on. Yes, there really is. One thing that's going on is they've got a little bit of a naval arms race in the works.
With
50
Hasbro.
years ago. Yeah. Yeah, with little plastic boats. 50 years ago, they had stopped building ships out of wood, and they'd started building ships out of like iron. So you've got like your iron boats there. But 1905, I think Britain has the Dreadnought, and that's like a really big deal. Might have been 1906. It's a really big boat that
really cool
is
name too.
Yeah.
Dreadnought.
Yeah, Dreadnought, like dread like fear and not like nothing, fear nothing. And there's like
Also the
guitars
name
named
of
after
big
that
guitars,
now.
Yeah.
It's a great name. But it's faster than any other ship. It can fire farther than any other ship. It's bigger than any other ship, and they can build it faster than traditional ships at that time.
That defies logic to me. But
it's a big step forward. They say that like overnight, when that thing rolls off the line, every ship that came before it is obsolete. It's that big a deal. They actually, they consider. Like, that's like a defining point in naval history. Also, we're going to be talking about naval stuff, and this is a sea-level podcast. I just want to remind people, so I'm going to get stuff wrong.
Oh, my God.
Or unspecific. So,
you're going overboard already.
Oh, yeah. If you talk about shipbuilding, there's three things that you really need to worry about. Armor, weaponry, and speed. You got to think about that as like a triangle, and you can have any two of those things, but you can't have the third. You can have a ship that is like armored to the tits and full of guns, but you're not going to be able to move that thing that fast. That's
like me. I've got this big gun show. I just don't get around too quick.
I'm going to move on like you didn't say that. You can have a ship that's like really fast and has and can take a punch, but you're not going to be able to cram very many weapons on it because you don't want to make it very heavy because you're prioritizing speed, right?
Sure.
There's this guy in right around that time. His name's Sir John Fisher. He's the first Sea Lord, which is such an awesome title.
That's pretty great.
He's not like the first guy to ever have that title. That's just what they call the guy who's like making the decisions at the top.
I'm picturing like Star-Lord from Guardians of the Galaxy. Like he's just a very kind of swaggery type dude. John the Fisherman. Maybe not. Maybe a Buccaneer.
No. Yeah, no. Think more like the old British guy in Pirates of the Caribbean. But he's in charge of the British Navy, and he's apparently like really arrogant. He's very, very sure of himself and his ideas, but he is kind of cool a lot of ways. I guess he's got some very progressive ideas about like discipline and stuff. He's way ahead of his time in that respect. He's like a sailor's shiplord. Awesome. But he's in charge of deciding where the British Navy is going to put the resources in, and he's made his name as a gunner. And so, for so many decisions that happened in World War I, you've got so many cavalry commanders that are controlling ground troops, so they're trying cavalry things in a war where that's obviously not going to work, and they keep trying it. This guy's a gunner, so he thinks guns are the most important thing you can have on a ship. So his ships, he thinks, are going to be fast, and they've got huge guns and no armor. Which I'm not saying anything about the bet he makes. That's just like his preference. When British people look at, of the time, looked at naval warfare, they thought of things in terms of their grand fleet. They thought anything that happened is going to involve our grand fleet, and it's going to be more powerful than anything else. So we're just going to worry about that. And if we're there first and we're firing at you first, there's going to be nothing left to hit us back. So we don't need to worry about armor. That's just where they were at. But there was something else happening during the lead up to World War I. Another branch of naval technology, and that's submarines. Submarines have been around for a long time. I think there was a submarine in the Civil War. I was going to look that up.
I was going to say that. Yeah, there was. I don't think it turned out too well for the occupants of it.
No, it didn't. But that technology was already around. Fisher, though, he didn't like the idea of submarines. He didn't really see it, so they just ignored it. They did have some submarines, but they weren't long range. They were these weird little things that kind of patrolled the coast. They probably looked a lot more like the tour submarines you'd get in now that are just sort of semi-submersible or, again, see, don't know. World War I breaks out. Uh-oh. Turns out submarines are going to be kind of a big deal.
A little bit.
Yeah. So they actually recall this guy, this Fisher. He hasn't been in charge for a few years, but they bring him back to shepherd the Navy through this period. And one of the things he has to do is try and figure out this submarine thing really quick. Like, he realizes he's made a mistake and he needs to make some submarines. So he's going to do it really, really quick. But there's a difference in philosophy in how, I talked about like everything with the British is all this grand fleet stuff. Germany, they have all these U-boats. They're way ahead in U-boat construction. They're way behind in like conventional shipbuilding, but they do have all these submarines. And they figure out pretty early that the smart thing to do is to send these submarines out as these sort of autonomous hunter-killer units.
Wolf packs, or was that World War II where that became the term?
No, yeah, I think
same deal.
Yeah, but just like go out there, try to find a ship, sink it. If you find it, sink it, great. And Britain has no real defense against this at the beginning part of the war. They can't see the submarines. They don't have submarines of their own. One thing they did do is early on, they tried to get motorboats and just like if they saw a periscope, zoom up to this thing and try and bash the periscope glass with a hammer.
Those motorboat son of bitches.
Yeah. So that's where they're at. But they have this difference in philosophy. The British want the submarines to be part of this fleet. And part of British fleet policy is that submarines have to go, or that, sorry, the fleet goes at 21 knots. That's it. So if you're part of the fleet, you have to go at 21 knots. British diesel engines in that day can't do 21 knots.
They're so
just
much.
Not so much. You got it. It's kind of, it's new tech to them. It's new tech to everybody, really. But I tell you what can do 21 knots, and that's steam engines, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an old tech. But
The old steam turbine.
The old steam turbine. But you can't really put a steam turbine in a submarine, right? There's some pretty obvious problems with having a coal fire in a closed environment with no ventilation, or an oil fire or whatever you're using to turn the turbine. So, sorry, I just lost my place in the notes there. Yeah, there's all sorts of, you would need a smokestack, you would need ventilation, and it would create a tremendous amount of heat.
And it would use up all your oxygen.
Yeah, it's just not a great idea.
Yeah, it's a bad idea.
It's a bad idea. Who would do it, right? Well, right around this time, there's an erroneous report that turns out to not be true, but, fog of war, they don't know that. They think that there's a report that there's a U-boat they see that's doing 19 knots, and U-boats didn't go that fast, apparently. But they believe it, and so that kind of freaks them out. So they say, fuck it. Let's put a steam engine in a submarine. Let's see what happens. So they do have, plans to address this stuff, but these are problems that you can't really engineer around to a certain extent. They have to have
you have nuclear power. That's all U-boat. In the submarine now is just a nuclear powered steam turbine. Yeah. But back in the day, obviously,
they had diesel engines that, if they had just settled for the ship doing 12 knots instead of, or even, I think they managed to get one up to 19, but that wasn't good enough. So they did have diesel engines as backups, but they had a steam engine that had, a funnel to let out the steam on a submarine. So there's a lot of problems in the design of this thing as a result of that. It's called the K-class submarine, and there's a reason you didn't hear too much about it in the history books. It's 330 feet long versus a U-boat. That's a big boat. Versus a U-boat, which is about 130 feet long. U-boats take about 30 seconds to crash dive when they need to. This thing took 5 minutes to dive. 5 minutes because they had to close up the vent. They had to put out the fire in the furnace. They had to close a bunch of different valves and vents to prevent water from getting in because has to be so much air circulation because they're, living in a closed environment with an oil fire going all the time. So it took them that long to submerge. Because it was so big, almost every one of them bottomed out at a certain point. You know what I mean by bottom out in terms of a submarine?
It could only go down so far?
Well, they have to, when they dive, if the front's going down first, the front can hit the bottom before the back really even gets out of the water.
Oh, right.
Or gets fully underwater. So that happened to just about every one of them because they're so long, right? The mushroom plugs that were supposed to close that were supposed to plug the funnels, that could just fail for mechanical reasons, or it could get debris in it and not close. So if that happened and they were submerging, water goes right into the furnace and can either blast out the burning oil and sort of an oil fire that spreads around the engineering compartment, or the furnace just goes out. that could also happen just if the waves were high enough. They could get over the funnel.
So
go
these
down
mushroom plugs, like I'm envisioning basically a bathroom sink stopper.
Yep. I think,
Wow.
yep. Yeah.
This sounds like
Engineering.
a death trap. This is the molasses tank of the sea.
Oh, they had kind of a clever idea with the oil tank, because the oil would feed the furnace, right? So they had it set up so that water would come into the oil tank to kind of replace the oil that was going out to keep buoyancy at the same level, which was fine if you were in calm waters, but if it got rocked up enough, the oil would start mixing with the water, and then that would get fed in and it would put out your fire. So even like just keeping the furnace lit was hard. And then, occasionally all hell would break loose in the engineering compartment and kill a few people because, water got in through the funnel. Very quickly, these ships became absolutely the most feared ship on the battlefield to people who were inside of them.
Yeah. I'd be more afraid of my own ship than an enemy ship at this point.
Yeah.
Like, no ship.
No ship.
No ship.
No ship.
No ship.
So this project had taken a long time to get off the ground. We're going to fast forward to 1918, January 31st, and we're going to talk about the Battle of May Island. You may have never heard of the Battle of May Island.
I may not have.
Yeah, it was a big-time secret operation.
Ooh.
And you know what? There were big-time losses on the Allied side. And there were no losses on the German side. That's how badly...
why we haven't heard of it.
Yeah.
Revisionist history.
I know, right? It was also a training exercise, which explains why there was no Germans there.
Oh, God.
They sent these ships. There was 19 ships or something. On a very dangerous mission to travel about 34 miles in the dark. There were 3 groups. So the way it started is you've got a battle cruiser, and then you've got, and it's kind of like in the front, the flagship. I might get some of these ship names wrong, by the way, right off the hop.
I would expect
and then
so.
And then you've got what's called a submarine tender and 5 submarines.
That sounds delicious, actually.
A submarine tender? Yeah.
Submarine tender. That's like something you would order at the bar.
Or that's what the person at Subway should be called.
Oh my God! Yeah, instead of a sandwich artist,
tender.
You're the submarine tender.
That's way better.
I'm just thinking like a deep fried, submarine little bite-sized sandwich.
Oh, submarine tenders?
Yeah, like chicken.
We're gonna
tenders.
have to edit this out because we've got some good ideas here.
Yeah, we can't. This is our intellectual property. I'm gonna trademark that right now.
Right now, you've registered the website as we speak. .xyz for 89 cents.
.xyz for 87 cents, Matt. It's even cheaper than you thought.
So they've got their big ass flagship at the front. Then they've got their submarine tender, followed by 5 submarines. All right?
Delicious.
And then there are 3 battle cruisers, and these battle cruisers are flanked by a bunch of basically submarine sweepers. There's a name for them, and I'm going to find it later, but I can't remember
Future
it
Matt can
right
put
now.
It in.
Yeah. They are... screening destroyers. That's what they're called. So they sit higher. Generally, they sit higher than torpedo depth. So torpedoes go underneath them. So they kind of flank. They flank around the bigger ships and look for U-boats. So we've got big ship, 5 submarines, this kind of battle group that's got 3 battle cruisers, and then these screening destroyers. Then there's another tender and 4 submarines, and then another battle group just like the first one behind. This thing, they're going to send these groups out in spaces of 15 minutes. And they're going to travel 34 miles. That's the mission.
This sounds like a physics question.
Now, I'm going to be fair here. There's some stuff going on that day. They had seen a U-boat, or at least there was a suspected U-boat sighting. So they're very concerned about their training exercise here. That's what this is. They're going to go out and they're going to meet up with another fleet. They're going to do some exercise and come back. They're very, very concerned about having seen a U-boat. So what they do is they put their back navigation light on. They kind of put, because they need to follow each other in a convoy and you need to be able to see. So they put like kind of blinders on it, so you'd only be able to see it within like about an 11-degree angle.
Okay.
So you have to be right behind the ship basically to see the one in front of you. So again, they're leaving from a place in Scotland that I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of, Rosyth. They're going to go around May Island. They're going to meet up with the other fleet. The first group of submarines, so this is... and sorry, I'm just going to make two little asides here. The first one is that there is an excellent video on the internet by this guy named Fred Knudsen. He does a video about this, and he has visuals, and it's really easy to understand. I'm going to do my best to explain this, but there's like 15 ships here, and they're British ships, so like precious little boys, they all have names, but I'm only going to tell you the names of ships that are things are going to go wrong with. So the rest of them I'm just going to describe in terms of like where they are in this convoy.
Okay, sorry, can I have a wee aside?
Yep.
I would like to name the convoy groups as different things. In standard convoy fashion, I think the first group should be Rubber Ducky.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
The second group.
So the first group then contains the flagship and the first flotilla of submarines.
All right, so that's Rubber Ducky.
And the tender. Yeah, Rubber Ducky. All right.
And then we're going to have the second one's going to be Papa Bear.
Right, so Papa Bear has got the second, that like battle group, and then the second flotilla of submarines.
And then the third one's got to be Maverick.
Okay, so, and then Maverick has got the last ones there. Now,
just for
I was
clarity for the whole story, I wanted to add more names in.
Can you repeat those for me? Sorry. So we had
Rubber Ducky, Papa Bear, Maverick.
Papa Bear, and Maverick. Okay, so Rubber Ducky, as Rubber Ducky's going along, encounter two mysterious ships right around the Isle of May. They're not part of this.
Jack Sparrow?
It is not Jack Sparrow.
Okay.
Actually, nobody knows where these ships came from. And all they kind of do in this story is be there. But what happens is the first two submarines in this convoy clear this thing easy. They see these two ships. They go, oh shit, we got to move out of the way. So they move out of the way. They take a Larry. Okay, I don't know nautical terms, even though I do have my. That's a left, yeah. I don't know nautical terms, even though I do have my boating license.
Really?
I do, yeah.
For what?
For jet skis.
Oh right, I forgot about that.
Yeah, one of those dicks.
Like an inner tube.
My dinghy.
My dinghy.
My dinghy.
You don't need a license for that.
Yeah. The first two just turn around it easy, but the third one, because it's very foggy while all of this is going on. The third one, which is K14, so now that I've named it, you know that things do not go well, slows down not knowing what to do. Then it sees the two ships and has to make a hard right turn. But its helm jams. So it's stuck making this hard right turn because it's on this boat that sucks. Or, they're on this boat that sucks, and that's kind of the sort of thing that happens, I guess. Now, the sub behind it, it sees the boats, moves behind, no big deal. It doesn't see that the one ahead of it has gotten off course, though. It just kind of... So now there's this sub that's K14. It's kind of unaccounted for, and it's making a hard left turn.
I thought it was making a right turn.
No, they made a left turn. I said Larry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They made... So this ship they turn off their engine. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Sub behind them misses them. Whew, that's a little worrisome. Turns out, though, that the sub behind them, K22, got to take a little aside here and tell you about K22. K22 was not K22's original name. K22's original name was K13.
It's an imposter.
Well, K13 catastrophically failed during its test voyage, killed half the crew. Yeah, killed half the crew. So they retrofitted it and rechristened it as K22, which, as a further aside, the flotilla that this group was part of was called the 13th Flotilla. So this is the former K13 that has had a horrible accident, rebranded K22, and it's in the 13th Flotilla. So the people who are on this ship just know they're on a death boat.
Is Tom Hanks the captain? Can we at least picture Tom Hanks as the captain? Like a little Apollo 13 action.
Sure. Yeah, we could do it.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So they had already been off course. K22 there. They had lost sight of the little blue dot ahead of them. And so they had already started veering in that same direction. And wouldn't you know it, it turns out they were on a direct collision course with the ship that had now come to a stop because it had been stuck turning left. So K22 rams into the hull of K14. The hulls get stuck together. The bow of K22 is stuck in the kind of bow section of K14. There's two poor dudes who are sleeping in that section that got busted open in K14. They just get sucked out into the ocean.
Oh.
What a rude way to get woken up, huh?
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
but
horrifying.
Yeah. Both ships are actually kind of okay. They managed to close some waterproof or watertight doors. They back up there. K22 backs up. It kind of backs up, and as it backs up, it turns to the left. So it kind of is now like 45 degrees from the other ship. Are you taking a picture of what we're doing?
Well, for the people who are listening at home, our listener, Matt and I are both wearing tank tops.
We are. Like white undershirt, tank tops, and it's a wonderful thing.
It's a great thing. And we just look like twins. I had to take a picture of it. It may make it to the website. Sorry. Carry on.
Okay. So everything is actually pretty okay. They start lighting off flares. But nobody knows this has happened because visibility is very poor. They do send out Morse code with a lantern, and they are in the process of sending out messages. But because of the amount of secrecy involved, there's a lot of like bouncing things back and forth between the person who's like the cryptographer who's supposed to encrypt these messages and the radio person, and there's like revisions, and then it has to go back to the cryptographer. It's just like that part of it is kind of a mess. And
yeah,
what
that
ends
would
up
have been
happening,
a process back in the day, right?
Oh yeah, it really was.
Just to send a message would take a couple minutes.
Yeah. And so meanwhile, this is what's happened to Rubber Ducky, right? The rest of Rubber Ducky is all, they're heading out. They do not know this has happened. But these two ships are kind of now stranded in the middle of where Papa Bear is about to be coming through.
No bueno.
Yeah, it is no bueno.
You don't want to get in the way of Papa Bear.
You do not want to get in the way of Papa Bear when Papa Bear has somewhere to go. So three of the battle cruisers managed to just kind of slip by these submarines. But the fourth one, pardon me, gonna have to edit that out. Have a little beer here. The fourth one, which incidentally was called the HMS Inflexible, had drifted off course because they're, this stuff's hard to do, right? In 1918, it's pretty hard to sail in formation in a foggy night.
HMS Rigid would have been a pretty good name too. Rolls off the tongue a little better.
The HMS Stiff.
The HMS Stiffy. All right. We're cooking
So it
now.
had drifted off course, and it turns out it's headed straight into K22, which, as you remember, is the submarine that had ran into the other one, K14.
Right.
Manages to miss a head-on collision. It kind of veers at the last minute, but it does scrape the armor and oil tanks and the ballast off of K22. It's fine though. The inflexible is fine. Just
Yeah, because it's very rigid.
It is. It's very
stiff.
It's quite stiff. Living up to its name, it is quite stiff.
Good to know.
30 minutes after the original collision, the subtender for the first group is finally made aware of the fact that 2 of its submarines have crashed into each other and are now 20 nautical miles behind them. So they decide that they're going to... He decides he's going to turn around.
This is Rubber Ducky.
Yeah, it's his Rubber Ducky. He's missed... Mama Ducky is missing some of his ducklings, her ducklings. So she's going to turn around, and she wants to do like a really wide turn to try to avoid all these boats that are coming up behind them. But she gives some kind of ambiguous orders to the other subs, and just kind of tells them to turn around at some point, and they all kind of turn around at a bit of a different point. So now everyone's kind of headed in a weird direction.
This sounds like just a gaggle of confusion.
Yeah.
This doesn't sound like it's heading to a good spot.
And so while they're turning around, well, we got to send a message out to the other ships, right? To let them know that this is what's happening.
Like
but,
SOS, like we're whipping a shitty here.
Yeah. But they can't...
Up.
But they can't do that because there's so much secrecy. So again, they have to go through this process of, we're going to draft a message and then we're going to revise it. And then, oh no, it needs to be encrypted. So it needs to go somewhere else and do that. So by the time the ships that had turned around were encountering these battle cruisers from Papa Bear, they don't know. Papa Bear has no idea that these ships are on the way because the message still has not been sent.
Oh, God.
Gonna take a slight intermission here and just do a little damage report just to see where we're at. K14, which is one submarine, has a flooded forward and 2 casualties. Those are the 2 guys that got sucked out. That's awful. K22 is a flooded forward. Starboard ballast has been... torn off, and its oil tanks have been torn off. And the HMX inflexible, it's fine.
Rigid as could be.
Yeah, it's just stiffing along.
Yeah.
It's got a stiff upper lip, as the British say. But here's where things are about to go from bad to worse. So
in our podcast or in the story? Probably both.
Probably both. The tender in the first sub from Rubber Ducky passed the battle cruisers in Papa Bear just fine, but the next 2 have an incredibly close call with some of these battle cruisers. Now, one thing that's just important to note here is that it is up to smaller ships to maneuver around bigger ships, especially in situations like these. But now they need to make it through the screening destroyers. And for some reason, I guess because they're responding to an emergency, but they just decide they're going to haul ass through these screening destroyers, and they don't really change their course. But again, they do make it through the screening destroyers. I'm so sorry.
So yeah, you were right when you said it was going to go from bad to worse.
They do make it through the screening destroyers. Again, a huge amount of close calls.
Huge.
But now they are on a collision course with the other submarine flotilla. So this is the submarine flotilla that is as part of Papa Bear. Like I said, there was 2 groups, right?
I thought there was 3 groups. I thought we had...
There is 3 groups, but the third group does not have any submarines with it. It's just the first 2 groups that have submarines with them.
Gotcha. So these are Papa Bear's submarines.
These are Papa Bear submarines. No, not Maverick. Okay. Maverick. We'll talk about Maverick.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh my God.
This is getting...
That's going to be good now that I think about it.
Okay.
So it winds up that first group of submarines from Rubber Ducky are on a collision course with that second group of submarines from Papa Bear. The first 2 ships, which is the tender for the first group and the first submarine, managed to make it past what's the HMS Fearless. That's the tender for the second group of submarines.
And that ship was not going to veer because it's fearless.
Because it's fearless, and also
every game of chicken.
And also, it shouldn't. But the second sub in the flotilla puts itself in a direct collision course. So what ends up happening is the Fearless runs into the back of K17. So now we've got 5 ships that are named. But the Fearless, which was the tender for the second group, has run into the third sub in that first group, which is the K17.
Wasn't that the Widowmaker from that movie, the Russian one, K17?
No, that was like U51 or something. Right?
Future Matt will look into this.
Yeah, we'll or maybe not. So the subtender has to stop because it's just run into a boat, right? It stops and blasts its horn. The sub directly behind it stops. The sub that was behind K17, though, in the first group, it's still going, doesn't see that any of this has happened, sees that at the last possible minute, veers to try to avoid all of this shit, near miss. K17 is sinking, though. And it doesn't actually collide with anything. It just kind of like hangs around at this point because there's a near miss. There's been an accident. The K17 is sinking. There's 3 subs in a tender that are just kind of hanging around trying to help that situation at this now second crash site. K4 is one of these subs that's hanging around that second crash site, and it decides it's going to kind of reverse out of this kind of clustered area and make a 90-degree turn to get out of the way. But what happens is it winds up right in the way of another ship that was coming from Papa Bear's flotilla, which is K6. K6 hits K4 right square in the middle, rams it. K4 starts sinking and dragging K6 down with it.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. K7 is the one that's right behind K6. It turns to miss K6, runs right into the front of K4, which is dragging K6 down. K4 breaks in 2, which is good for the people on K6, but very bad for the people on K4 because they're all dead. It's like 54 sailors, I think. And it's probably one of those situations where, because it broke in part, the water rushes in, you wouldn't be able to get out. You'd be pushed into the back of...
Yeah.
of the submarine and trapped as it went down.
God damn.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, remember K17? That's the first one that got hit in this group here.
Right.
It's sinking, and the people need to get out. There's 56 men that had managed to get out and are in the water. And there's boats from the Fearless, and they're deployed, and they're trying to help the sailors. Bet you forgot about Maverick.
Yeah, so Maverick's coming in.
Maverick is coming in. There's no submarines with Maverick, but what Maverick is a big formation of these big battle cruisers and then all these screening destroyers, right? So the battle cruisers come through, and they're actually surprisingly nimble. Great captains on these things, apparently. They make it through. They don't hit anything. They don't hurt anybody. What's that?
They're top guns.
They're top guns, right?
Yeah.
But these screening destroyers, Several of them wind up going right through the spot where all the men in the water are. And yeah.
No.
So 56 men went into the water. They managed to fish 10 of them out.
Oh.
And then one of them died right after that. So
It's like
9.
an 80% loss.
Yeah. So after 1 hour and 15 minutes, the Battle of May Island had completed. End of battle damage report. 2 of the 9 submarines that they sent out were completely destroyed. 3 of them were damaged. That's a 50% casualty rate. The HMS Fearless, which had ran headlong into, hadn't just grazed the side, had ran headlong into one of the submarines. It was really, really damaged at the front. It was still like it could make it to port, but it was very damaged, needed a lot of fixing. Inflexible, again, very strong.
That's my boy.
Yeah, just a little bright ray of sunshine in this in this sad escapade. 104 sailors died as part of this training exercise to travel 34 miles and meet up with another ship. Yeah.
Okay, the other ship, like obviously no.
It was a bunch of other ships. Yeah, I don't think anything really happened with them. I don't know if there were submarines with them because all the problems happened with submarines here, right?
Yeah, I'm picturing like you ever see like an icy highway where people are trying to, there's been an accident, they're trying to get around and they just keep hitting shit and like.
Yeah, but like compound that. So, the problem with a 330-foot long ship is if the front of your ship is heading towards something and you start to turn, that turn is starting 330 feet behind you.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You're already at a huge disadvantage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that these things were going so fast meant that they were just unmaneuverable.
But I mean, let's talk about the precision of the captains on these guys who actually, like, I mean, yeah, they got in these accidents, which is unfortunate, but at the same time, you think of how big the sea is, right? And these guys were traveling to a point where they were so accurately in line with each other that they hit each other. Like, that's pretty wild.
It might as well have been a collision on a road, really, when you think about it.
They were in such a narrow area that they all hit the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of impressive in a way. I mean,
yeah.
They didn't have this, especially at night with no light. I mean, you're not going to see that till you're right on it.
Yeah.
So,
I
had no idea.
One really shitty thing about these submarines that I forgot to mention is that water could get in through the top of it and get on the kind of electronics. And what would happen is it would ground the ladder leading up. So if you touched the ladder, you'd get shocked.
Oh my God. I think of all of the things like I've always had a bit of a phobia of like drowning or something, right? And I always thought like a submarine or like even a boat, like I don't think I could go on a cruise ship unless I was like staying like on the top deck. I could just open like a patio door and be outside. You know what I mean? You see these movies where people are in the corridors and they can't. I'm like, nah, no thanks.
I was watching something about pressure differential. It was like an industrial video for commercial divers about a bunch of accidents that have happened. Like people, there was
what's it called? The diving bell. Oh my God.
But that sort of situation, right? Where, like one guy got stuck on the bottom of a pool because nobody knew he was diving and he cleaned off the bottom vent there and he was too close to it and it like sucked him down to the bottom.
Oh,
man.
Which
I didn't know the vent on the bottom of a pool could do that.
Oh, yeah. There was a guy who got sucked into a nuke plant in the States somewhere. He was like scuba diving outside of their water intake.
Yeah.
And he got sucked into the plant.
Ooh.
Yeah, like there's a big draw on those. Like you can see the current on them if you ever, like I've seen them, and the draw is like insane. Like the current's super fast on that. Like diving is dangerous as shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never want to do it.
I worked with a guy who was a diver, and he was like, he did deep sea diving, and He's like, yeah, one day I lost my tether, and he's like, I turned around and grabbed it, like, the end of it. He's like, that was almost it for me. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, like, you can't see shit.
You don't know which way's up.
Oh, man. That's, like, to me, that's horrifying. To be in a sub, and then to be in a sub. And then even if you got out of the sub, when the sub's underwater, you fire up to the top like a rocket. And then you get massive decompression.
Yeah. Assuming now, like, in this day and age, they weren't going super deep.
Still,
like,
though, I would think...
yeah, I wouldn't want to be 50 feet deep and rocketing up. You know, that's enough.
God.
So the aftermath here of this battle, quick court-martial to try and figure out what the F happened. Nobody can figure out, you know, initially, those two ships that kind of started this chain reaction, nobody can figure out where the hell they came from. They thought they might have been minesweepers, but the company that was doing the minesweeping said it wasn't us. Or they couldn't figure... What's that?
100% ghost ship.
Probably. You're probably onto something.
That's my theory.
Mm-hmm. They couldn't figure out how the rudder got stuck on the one boat. They, like, examined every part of it and just could not figure out how that even happened. It was hugely embarrassing for the British fleet, so they just swept the whole thing under the rug, didn't talk about it, didn't publicly acknowledge it until the 90s. And at that point, I think people knew where the wrecks were, so I think they couldn't really ignore it anymore. No monument until 2002. The K-class submarines actually hung around for a surprisingly long time after this. They were retrofitted, I think, with proper engines at a certain point, and they put guns on them, and they called them M-class, and then they retrofitted some of those. There was, at a certain point, I should have looked into what the actual dates are, but there's two of them left, and one of them just disappears one day. And it's just gone for a couple days, and then some fisherman says, "Oh, hey, I saw that boat you're looking for. Is it normal for those things to go to submerge backwards?" And they said, "No, it isn't."
How long ago was this?
I don't.
Like recent or like?
No, not that recent. It probably would have been like if I'm guessing like the 40s maybe. They lasted that long.
Here's your sea content.
Yeah. I just know that it happened. I don't know when.
All right, fair enough.
So anyways, that was the last straw. They finally decommissioned the other one and didn't give it a chance to kill its entire crew. I know that's the story kind of the K-class submarines and also of the Battle of May Island.
Wow, very fascinating. I had no idea.
One thing as we approach Remembrance Day here that I would just like to point out, especially when it goes to, World War I, there's a lot of, patriotism that goes into thinking about, what various countries did in World War I, as there should be. People fought extremely bravely. They did an amazing thing. I can't even imagine being put into that kind of situation.
Never.
But we shouldn't forget that so many people in that conflict died because of stupid decisions that were made by the people in charge. Right?
Oh, that one especially.
Who puts a steam engine in a submarine? Well, I got this dumb idea. Who makes people run into machine gun fire over and over again? Well, I got this dumb idea. It's just we shouldn't be letting those people off the hook.
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's
lest we forget.
Lest we forget, yeah, for sure. And that's maybe a future show would be a good World War One. I mean,
yeah, as we try to find the right balance of
silliness and fact. We could tone down the silliness for an episode or two, I'm sure. Probably not.
Well, yeah, I don't know how silly this one was anyways. It's kind of grim.
It is kind of grim. Well, most of our shows are actually kind of grim.
That is true.
There's been a lot of death and destruction.
Not many happy things are notable in history. I'll try and find one.
No. But I'll give you Kev's closing fact.
All right.
I found this when I was looking up different actors to kind of throw into the mix, but I thought this guy was a little too mainstream that it would be obvious that you would know he didn't have any kind of military service. But I found a fascinating thing in his past that I had no idea about, and I'm going to share it with you and our listener.
Okay.
Bill fucking Murray. We're all familiar with
right.
Bill Murray, Ghostbusters, and all kinds of great stuff. Caddyshack.
Yep, brother of Brian Doyle Murray.
Did you know that when Bill Murray was 20, he was arrested at Chicago O'Hare Airport with a whopping 10 pounds of cocaine?
What?
Yeah. 10 pounds of the devil's dandruff.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's a lot.
That's a lot of coke.
It's like 5 kilos.
Yeah. I mean, I've never done cocaine, but I assume that this is like Scarface level mountain of cocaine.
I have to imagine.
This is enough to kill an army.
I mean, I also have a sea-level understanding of cocaine, so...
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, 20 pounds of cocaine. And what happened to trigger the search was he jokingly said to a passenger, and I can envision this in very Bill Murray style, it's just a bomb. Which now you would never do, but back then, maybe just thinking it's a joke. So they searched him, and he ended up doing probation.
Huh.
Yeah. Who knew?
Back in the day, they were very lenient about that sort of thing, apparently.
10 pounds of cocaine.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure that was just for one SNL party.
Was he already famous at that point?
I don't know. I don't think so. Back to the whole C- thing. I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't
Not
go that
very well.
deep on this, okay? I just know that 10 pounds of cocaine.
Not very well researched, but that is your best closing actual fact, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting.
That is.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for
That's that.
joining us, folks.
That's our show.
That's it. Goodbye. Good night. Good day. Hasta luego.
All right, calm down.